I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds and welcome to my horror house. Over the last few Mondays we've looked at the original run of the BBC's Ghost Stories for Christmas, which ran from 1971 through to 1978, and the BBC revived it for a very short period, 2005 and 2006, and that brief revival marked a return to adapting the ghost stories of M.R. James and a return to period settings for the short films. As with my previous videos about the ghost stories for Christmas, you can watch the episodes here on YouTube. I will provide links in the description field down below, so I won't be going into heavy spoiler territory for either of the episodes, and we're going to kick off with A View from a Hill, which was first broadcast on the 23rd of December 2005. It concerns historian Dr. Fanshawe, who's called to the country estate of Squire Richards to catalogue an archaeological collection that was amassed by the Squire's father with a view to selling it. He's fallen on fairly hard times. Fanshawe needs to establish the provenance of the pieces in the collection because they're from the local area, and so takes one of the old archaeologists' pair of antique binoculars on a walk of the local area. From the hilltop of the title of the story, when he looks through these binoculars, he can make out an abbey off in the distance, which to the naked eye has long since fallen into ruin following Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. It's just a few foundation stones now, but whenever he lifts up the binoculars, he can see it in all its pomp and all his glory. Now, what obsessed the old archaeologist now obsesses Fanshawe. But unfortunately for him, it seems that the things you're able to see through the binoculars are also able to see you. The return to period settings and adapting the work of James must have been a relief for long-term fans of these festive chillers. The previous two episodes from way back in 1977 and 1978 were perhaps a development too far for purists, resulting in one outstanding short film and one that's perhaps the most perplexingly unsuccessful of the entire original run. But we're back on familiar territory now. But I have to admit that these early 20th century attempts to return to the well feel a little flatter than their 70s counterparts did. Right off the bat, though, the location scout earned his or her wages. It's something I've been saying consistently throughout these review videos, and once again the Squire's house, the landscape that's been chosen for Fanshawe to view the area from the hilltop, and the ghostly abbey all really maintain the quality that we've come to expect from these short films. The handling of the atmosphere and tension, though, is a little more lacking. And it's not something I can completely put my finger on. There are long sections in this film without dialogue, and these are the areas that try and bring the atmosphere and try and bring the chills. And some of them are more successful than others. There's a nice little "there's something in the trees" scene set in the woodland. There's a figure that appears in a bathroom. That's quite effective. But then the spell is broken with the urge to include quick cuts and filmmaking techniques which belie the time these films are being made. It's as if the filmmakers started out with the best of intentions and really wanted to try and recreate the magic from episodes past, but perhaps got cold feet, underestimated their audience, and added some techniques that much better fit sort of music videos of the time. Much more effective is a simple sigh heard in a darkened bedroom. We simply don't need apparitions judderingly advancing on the camera thanks to early 2000s editing techniques. If you're a fan of ambiguous endings, though, I think it's fair to say A View from a Hill does sort of bizarrely just end, and I think I like it in a sort of final shot of The Sopranos kind of way. I've been thinking about it a lot, so I guess I like it rather than don't like it, but at the time it was certainly a case of, oh, it's finished. The next episode fares a little better, in my opinion. That would be number 13, which was first broadcast on the 22nd of December 2006. It concerns an Oxford academic, isn't it always, who's brought to a small cathedral town to authenticate and catalogue a collection of historical papers, aren't they always? The more he learns of the parish's past, the less dismissive he becomes of the current day superstitions of the locals, and the more fascinated he becomes by room number 13 at the hotel he is staying in, especially since the hotel does not have a room 13. Straight away, once again, the locations are absolutely on point. The hotel our academic checks into, well, basically, I want to stay there. The little library nook that he is set aside in to do his work, and the shelves of musty old books are exactly the kind of thing we tune into to see in these sort of festive annual ghost stories. Professor Anderson, in the great Jamesian tradition, is buttoned down, a little bit of a prig. Our American cousins might say he's got a stick up his ass. Of course, all of this is undone when his regimented life intersects with the supernatural. And if these depictions start to feel a little formulaic, I'm afraid that charge has to be laid at the feet of M.R. James. But once a year or once every few years at Christmas time, a little bit of what you expect isn't necessarily a bad thing, is it? As with the previous episode, though, the handling of the ghostly stuff is not great. Lawrence Gordon Clark directed the first 7 episodes from 1971 to 1977, and they are examples of necessity being the mother of invention, and I couldn't help but wonder what wonderfully imaginative ways he might have come up with to raise the goose flesh on the forearms. Here in 2006, we lean far too heavily on a replica of part of Bosch's painting The Garden of Earthly Delights, and the appearance more than once of a silhouette. Yeah, just a silhouette. The music too is a little too on the nose. Nothing of the weirdly atonal, almost experimental spirit of invention from the 1970s episodes. And I know I'm starting to sound like a dreadful old bore who just goes on about how things were better in the old days. But both of these episodes show such a willingness to recapture the spirit of those original episodes that it's so disappointing that they sort of lack the gumption to be even a tad as experimental as some of the originals were. There's too much zooming and panning, and when the door to number 13 finally opens and we see what's inside, it's a little too overproduced for my tastes. The flickering image and the fluttering bird sounds. Considering that we're dealing with a door opening onto a pitch black space with something inside it, I thought of The Lost Highway, I thought of Mulholland Drive, and wondered what David Lynch might make of this wonderful material. Both he and Lawrence Gordon Clark, although with very different sensibilities, seemed to have a much better audio-visual grasp of the uncanny than we get here and in the previous episode. So for both episodes, I applaud the intention and the effort. I preferred number 13 just a little more than A View from a Hill, but I feel that both settle in the end for something safe rather than strive for something extraordinary.